Greetings adventurers, Delver here. It looks like tabletop gaming's most embarrassing nostalgia grift is back in the news again. That's right, Colson Phillies, it's TSR, and by that I mean the Body Snatcher version. I did a video about them a couple months ago, but in case you haven't watched it, I'll go ahead and give a quick recap. If you're already up to date on the deep lore, feel free to skip to here. So Gary Gygax founded TSR Incorporated back in 1973 to publish Dungeons & Dragons before leaving/being forced out in 1984. Then the company went bankrupt in 1997 and was acquired by Wizards of the Coast, who stopped using the TSR name on new D&D products, emphasis on new, beginning with 3rd edition, and allowed the trademark to expire in the early 2000s. In 2013, Jason Elliott picked up the trademark and started a new company called TSR to publish Gygax magazine and a new edition of Top Secret, but he missed a trademark filing in 2020, which allowed Justin Lanasa and Ernie Gygax, who had previously been working with Elliott, to snipe it and open a 3rd TSR, as well as charge Elliott a licensing fee to continue using the name. Initially, Ernie and Lanasa were looking to convert the original TSR's old headquarters into a museum, but then they partnered up with Stephen Deinhardt, who is developing Giant Lands, intended to be a spiritual successor to Gamma World, alongside former TSR designer Jim Ward and artists Larry Elmore and Jeff D., also of original TSR fame. Lanasa's company would publish Giant Lands, and the whole thing would be advertised as the return of the original TSR. They even announced a reboot of Star Frontiers as well. Stick a pin in that one. Everything was going fine until Ernie made some boomerific comments in an interview that seemed to imply TSR was a place for gamers and developers with, shall we say, antiquated social views. Naturally, people started asking TSR for clarification, but TSR tried to claim that Ernie never said anything, which only caused the questioning to intensify. Then the Giant Lands Twitter account called a trans user disgusting for asking TSR to say they don't have a problem with trans people. That went over about as well as you'd expect. During the shit show that followed, NuTSR seemed to do everything in their power to make the situation worse. Deinhardt and Lanasa started arguing with people on social media, Jim Ward made appearances on War Campaign, and the accounts for TSR and Giant Lands started acting more like right-wing political actors than game companies. There are times to celebrate Midwestern German heritage, and there are times to say #KeepGamingFantasy. In the middle of a controversy over your company spokesman making potentially racist and transphobic comments is not one of those times. The whole fiasco culminated with Deinhardt and Ernie releasing identical tweets accusing Wizards of the Coast of secretly orchestrating the backlash against them. This, it seems, was a step too far, because immediately after, the whole operation went radio silent. Then they announced a new social media manager because apparently Deinhardt had been the one running all of it. Not just the TSR and Giant Lands accounts, but the personal accounts of Ernie and Lanasa as well. Anyway, Ernie finally released an apology/clarification, while Deinhardt, despite arguably bearing the most blame for it all, elected to throw TSR under the bus and announced that Giant Lands was cutting ties and would now be published under his own company, Wonderfield. Ernie and Lanasa started referring to themselves as the Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum, and for all intents and purposes, the saga of TSR III was over. So, now that we've got that clusterfuck out of the way, it's time to talk about the new clusterfuck, because of course there's a new clusterfuck. So it turns out when Lanasa went to snipe the TSR trademark, he didn't just go for the name TSR, he also tried to register a bunch of TSR Incorporated's old logos, and then started selling t-shirts with those logos, and offering to license the brand to third parties. Trouble is, WotC was still selling and or licensing TSR Incorporated legacy products with those logos, which makes them the common law owners. Needless to say, WotC weren't too pleased with Lanasa's shenanigans, and they filed to have TSR3's trademarks cancelled on the grounds of fraud and likelihood to confuse. I know we hear a lot about trademark trolls in the gaming sphere, but considering that TSR3's entire business plan revolves around tricking people into thinking they're the successors in interest to a company WotC purchased, it's hard to argue against WotC here, especially when TSR3 does something like, I don't know, announce a reboot of a game they don't own the rights to, using artwork they also don't own, from said game they don't own, which, by the way, is still being sold by Wizards of the Coast. Because yeah, they totally did that. And that's just the likelihood to confuse charge. The fraud charge is because Lanasa filed for exclusive registration instead of concurrent registration, which means he claimed to be the sole party using those marks, ergo he lied to the patent office. Rather than do the sensible thing and back the fuck off, TSR decided to sue WotC back, but not before abandoning their trademark claims, even though they're suing to have the court declare who owns the logos. Also, they filed the suit in North Carolina, even though WotC is based in Seattle and incorporated out of Delaware, and the hobby shop is in Wisconsin. But hey, I guess it doesn't matter because they ended up dropping the suit. Only not really? They say they're planning to sue WotC again, in the proper state this time, and they're trying to crowdfund it by selling memberships to the hobby shop on Indiegogo. Become a champion of TSR and support TSR's campaign against Wizards of the Coast. TSR is taking a stand against Wizards of the Coast and its wrongful bullying of TSR, our trademarks, and its public libeling and slander of all those who helped create TSR-based Dungeons and Dragons and products. Wizards of the Coast has continually bullied TSR regarding TSR's legally owned trademarks. Wizards of the Coast has refused to answer all of TSR's repeated requests that they show any proof of their claims. Wizards of the Coast has the vast resources behind them and is implying to bring them down to bear on TSR. Translation, we tried to play single white female and got caught, so now we're playing Epic v Apple. Someone should probably tell them how that case ended. As for that bit about WotC's public libeling and slander, that's referring to the Looney Tunes Legacy disclaimer WotC stuck on the drive-thru pages of everything pre-5th edition. TSR3 is really mad about this disclaimer, and apparently once they've settled the trademark issue, they're going to sue to have WotC remove it. To be clear, TSR3 doesn't own any of the products that the disclaimer applies to, nor do they employ or represent any of the authors supposedly being defamed. For that matter, the disclaimer doesn't even name any specific individuals or companies, so I don't know how they're planning to argue a case here. And to cap it all off, we have this gem. We believe in the freedom to write games, novels, and books as art forms. WotC stands against TSR. Yeah, because WotC putting a disclaimer on their own products is clearly preventing fake DSR from writing games. How is anybody buying these chuckleheads? They can't even grift properly. I can't fathom for the life of me how getting into a suicidal legal battle with Hasbro could possibly be easier or more profitable than just writing some freaking Osric modules. Then again, maybe that's the point. The last controversy pretty much nuked their image and cost them the partnership with Giantlands, which meant they not only lost the valuable name association with Jim Ward and Larry Elmore, but also their only actual product. The TSR name and logos are all they have left. Now faced with the inevitability of losing those as well, maybe they see this as the only option they have left. One final push to grab as much money as they can before cashing out and martyring themselves in the hearts of angry grognards everywhere. Will it work? Probably not, at least not for TSR. So far, they've only managed to raise 10% of their $50,000 goal. It is a flexible goal, so that is money in their pocket, but I doubt they'll have much left once WotC's done with them. And even if they're lying about refiling, $5,400 is pretty weak on a company scale. Still, the optics of WotC crushing an old-school indie publisher, ostensibly, though not really, headed by the son of Gary Gygax, is sure to play well for the faux SR crowd and further feed their persecution complex. I feel like the whole fake TSR saga is depressingly representative of everything that's wrong with the D&D community right now, and it sort of ties into the other bit of online drama that unfolded these past weeks. For those not in the know, WotC released some errata updates for a bunch of D&D books, one of which removed a few paragraphs of flavor text from a handful of creatures in Volo's Guide to Monsters. This made some people extremely angry, and it's all a bit bizarre because such minor changes like this are not the kind of thing you would expect to cause this level of rage. But then again, you wouldn't expect a fledgling OSR company to stake its entire business on political indignation either. And that's the heart of the issue, I think. D&D has too many reactionaries, and I mean that in the literal sense, not the bread tube sense. Pretty much every controversy surrounding D&D as of late has been characterized by overreaction on all sides. Somebody overreacts to orcs and drow being default villains, and WotC completely nixes racial ASIs. WotC changes some flavor text in Volo's Guide, and suddenly the lore is ruined, and beholders and mind flayers are good guys. From Corellan's Blessing, to the combat wheelchair, to Strixhaven, to the legacy disclaimer, every goddamn thing is re-wokeness versus die mad nerds. Hell, it's not even limited to just D&D. Pathfinder is apparently retconning slavery out of the setting because one person got offended by villains having slaves and wrote an angry letter. On the opposite side of the aisle, people lost their shit when Games Workshop gave a boilerplate, "We support diversity, by the way, please don't be fascist IRL" statement, which was itself an overreaction to journos and bloggers getting stupidly butthurt over God Emperor Trump memes. Or how about over in Battletech land, where in one corner we have Faith McCloskey launching a harassment campaign against author Blaine Lee Pardoe for the crime of being a conservative, while in the other corner we have Arch and Razorfist trying to kick trans people out of the hobby. Forget the far future, in the grim darkness of the 2020s there is only flame war. But I digress. Getting back on topic, I just found out while writing this script that Fake TSR actually does have a game coming out. They've partnered with a new developer, and apparently Larry Elmore is back on board, and they're still doing the Star Frontiers reboot? Well, fuck me, I'll be fucked if I know what their fucking deal is now. I do want to end on a positive note, so I guess I'll just take this opportunity to remind everyone that internet drama isn't real life and that the only thing that really matters in the tabletop world is you and your friends. I'm the Rambling Rune Pony, thanks for watching and Happy New Year.